In accordance with the leave given, the House now comes to questions for oral answer. Question number 1 in the name of James Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and reads, does he stand by all his answers to oral question number 5 yesterday?
The Honourable Bill English.
Speaker, yes.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
To the Minister, when he said yesterday that, quote, it is going to take a long time for the world to heat up significantly and it's going to take a long time to take the measures that might mitigate that, end quote, what did he consider to be significant?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't want to get into a technical discussion here, but I was just reflecting on the time spans covered by the climate change models, which run out for about 100 years.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
To the Minister, would he say that it is significant or insignificant that global temperatures will have risen by 1 degree by the end of this year, which is halfway to the agreed global limit of a 2-degree rise?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it was in anticipation of that kind of temperature increase that the previous government, with the then support of the Greens, put in place the emissions trading system, and the increase in the carbon price probably reflects a growing understanding that those temperatures are rising and more mitigation will be required.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Given that NIWA has found that the 2013 drought, which cost the New Zealand economy an estimated $1.3 billion, was longer and more severe because of climate change, would he not agree that taking, quote, the measures to mitigate that, end quote, are more urgent than he suggested yesterday?
The Honourable Bill English.
Oh, well, Mr. Speaker, I think one can have a discussion about the degree of urgency around climate change policy without relying on individual weather events, where it's pretty hard. It can be difficult to connect one to the other, or to suggest to the public that some particular policy might avoid droughts in the future. I think that's unlikely. But there are debatable points about how much urgency, and I guess that will be discussed at the Paris conference in the next few weeks.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
To the Minister, well, given then that NIWA have also found that events such as the 2014 Northland rainstorms, which cost $18 million just in direct insurance claims, are now twice as likely to happen because of climate change, would he not agree that taking the measures to mitigate that are actually more important than he suggested yesterday?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the member could go through a list of individual events which point in the direction that the climate is warming up, but as he knows probably better than most, it's a global system, and the impact of global action is what's going to be important, and that will be tested in the next few weeks in Paris.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
What advice has he received from Treasury about the economic impact of more frequent and more severe floods, storms and droughts that are already happening or anticipated to happen in New Zealand?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I haven't received advice specifically on that, although when I've looked at other advice from other sources, it's clear that there is some balancing effects, that in some parts of the world we're going to see more food production, for instance, rather than less. But in fact, Treasury's advice has largely focused on the fact that New Zealand faces the prospect of giving up more economic growth per unit reduction in carbon output than any other developed country, which is one of the reasons the government's pretty careful about how it sets its targets, because the economic cost to us of any target similar to in other countries is higher.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
So how exactly does this government's economic strategy of more roads, more cows and more oil fit with the urgent need to reduce our climate emissions in the next 30 years?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I suppose in the first case we want to be pretty careful about the negative effects of no cows, no oil and less roads, which is the Greens policy. So we're unlikely to go down that track. But as I've said to the member before, the principal tool for making complex trade-offs around climate change is the emissions trading system. It sends a price signal that price signal is currently changing, and it's a bit unfortunate that the Greens have abandoned what was a multi-party consensus and are heading off in the direction of a carbon tax.
Question number 2, Andrew Little.